if you have key people, like call like the bus concept, like if that person got hit by a bus and no one else knows how to do that, that is not a good thing. And that includes you as the owner, right? You need to have people or it written down on how to do these processes, which is really important.
Hello, business human. Are you a misfit? A person who wants to make a difference in this business world? Are you one of the unconventional, the visionaries, the quiet innovators, the heart-centered leaders, the purpose-driven, the community builders, the givers? Then you are my people. I used to think business was a secret formula to be discovered and followed, but now I know it isn't a set of rules. It's an exciting, creative adventure. And I want to be on that adventure with you. I am your lady of business, Melody Edwards. Welcome to the Business Misfits podcast. Why, hello, BizFit. It is I, Melody, your lady of business. And today I am talking with Samantha Doyle, or Sam, as I call her. Sam has such a vast amount of experience in business, a very unique experience. And today I wanted to gift you with some of her wisdom and knowledge because she has been such a gift to me and my company. She's my strategic coach. And we talk about some of the things she does. I've had a lot of coaches, I've been in a lot of coaching programs. She does it differently and she uses a different model and it works really well for us. But I also wanted you guys to have the opportunity to hear some of the things that we don't get to hear about a lot: how to make your company more saleable, how to think about your business in a different way. Most of us think of our business as a baby that we are raising, and it's not supposed to be that way. Right now, for instance, I'm staying at my parents' house watching my grandmother full time. She's 95 with dementia. That's a full time job. If I treated my business like a baby, I wouldn't be able to leave my company. And I've been able to leave my company for months at a time because I've built systems, I've built the support and the network of people inside of it to trust that they can run things when I'm not there. And so that's the goal, right? That's the goal that we have when we start a business: to support ourselves, to put our vision into the world, and to be able to leave it when we need to do our life. Anyway, we focus a lot about how to make your company more saleable, how to approach planning for your company. And what I love about Sam is she does not pretend that she has her shit together completely. She's an amazing coach and she has multiple businesses right now. And also, she still is the cobbler's children with no shoes. You know that story about the cobbler whose children have no shoes? Sometimes we are all like that in our businesses. I experience that with home service VA too, sometimes, where I'm teaching people systems that I sometimes don't use. And there's no excuse, but I just want you to know that we're all doing the best we can. We're all real. And I love it when people that I admire and trust show their weaknesses in a vulnerable way and don't feel like they have to pretend that they're perfect all the time. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this episode and I hope you learned something from this. I certainly did. I don't know everything, and she is always teaching me more. So enjoy my conversation with my good friend, Sam. Well, hello, Samantha Doyle. Welcome to the Business Misfits. How are you today?
I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Mel. I know ever since you launched this thing, I've been anxiously awaiting to be a part of this.
Well, I did invite you right from the beginning, and I'm excited because this is your very first podcast ever. So I feel very special. Thank you.
Yes, yes. I'm very excited.
Well, the first question I always ask everybody when we start is, are you a business misfit?
We've actually had this conversation many times.
Yes.
And I remember when you were first launching your podcast and we had this conversation, and I was like, I don't know, am I? And we had a whole conversation about it. And I think you helped me realize that I truly am a misfit. But I think that, in the world that I have lived in, it's sometimes hard to accept or realize that I'm a misfit. And so coming to terms with it, I think maybe took me a little while, but I definitely am, especially the more I've spent time with you and realized the way that I kind of think about things and the way that I am constantly wanting to give my time away. um, I don't know. We've talked about it so much. I'm trying to remember our conversation.
There's been so many. You definitely are a misfit. It's just I felt the same way when I first came up with this concept because I was always feeling like I can fit in. I'm one of the people. I'm not different. And then having to accept at a certain point that there were things about me that made me different and that was totally okay. And once I accepted it, it was like superpowers, right? So a misfit can be many things or a bizfit can be many things, but I'm so glad that you have done your years of therapy on it and come to terms with the fact that, yes, you are a business misfit.
My Mel therapy. It's
Yes.
been very, very helpful, trust me.
Well, I'm very glad to hear that. And so for our audience, I'm just going to explain how I know you and why this conversation means a lot to me. You are our strategic coach, basically. I would call you a strategic coach minimally in home service VA, my company. And you are so much more, though, than a coach, I would say. You give a lot of yourself to what we do, and it's pretty intensive, the work that we do throughout the year. And it's really moved my company forward a lot. And so sometimes people in like, I think we're all burned out on the word coach, and I don't think of you like that. And so I would love you to explain kind of how you think about it, kind of talk about what you do in the work that you do with us, because that's really what I want to explain to people is how I think I moved from a mindset way back of doing everything myself, trying to figure out everything the hard way. And over the years, I've had many coaches and mentors that have moved me forward. But in terms of internally in my company, you have been the person who has moved us forward the most, I would say.
Well, thank you. I love that, and we've been working together for a little over a year now, year and like 3 or 4 months, which has been amazing, and I love every minute of it. But yeah, we've had this conversation. It's like, well, you're not really a coach. I mean, you are, but you do so much more. And there's no word for it, but you're right. I would say it's hard to explain, but when I think about the things that we do together and the things that I do with my clients that's different than maybe a typical coach is that I go deeper. And so a lot of what we spend our time doing is in the details. And so sometimes I feel like people think of a business coach. And again, I want to differentiate between like a life coach or someone who's more of a mindset coach, I think, versus a strategic coach, because there's a difference there also. And I'm definitely on the strategy side and the nerdy side, but we'll pull up spreadsheets and we'll figure out the pricing structure and the breakdown of things. We'll get into the nitty gritty of a personnel issue and how we're going to handle it and outline the steps of exactly what's going to happen first, second, and third. And I like to go that extra step with people, because I feel like sometimes a coach just asks good questions, which sometimes I do that, right? And I get you thinking, which is great. But then you're like, okay, now what? Now what do I do? I'm like, okay, now I know I need to do this thing, but how? How do I actually do it? And so I like to go in depth, whether it's financials, people, marketing strategy, whatever that is. Does that resonate with you? I guess.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, it does. And so I think some of our listeners might understand like the EOS model of coaching, the structure of that. I don't know. What do they call EOS? Like a
Yeah, it's the entrepreneurial operating system, and that's how I actually started was doing EOS. I was never a quote unquote certified EOS implementer. My father was, and so I went through all the trainings, and we implemented EOS internally in our group of companies that we owned. And then when I decided to go off on my own, I became a certified scaling up coach, which is Vern Harnish. He wrote the book Rockefeller Habits, which is now rebranded to a book called Start to Scale. And it's a similar model. It's actually kind of a more in-depth model than EOS. So it has more finance involved, a lot more strategy involved, but it's a very similar model. But the thing I liked about it was that EOS is a kind of a one size fits all model. And so no matter where you're at in your company, you kind of have to follow it in ABC order. Whereas with scaling up, I can customize it for every single one of my clients, which I really, really wanted to be able to do.
yeah, when you first told me that you were gonna become a certified scaling up, what do they call coach? I
Yeah.
actually had read that book a couple of years ago and I loved it. but I also was like, this is it just even with EOS, it's really hard for a business owner to implement these things inside of their company themselves. I
Yeah,
would say like most business owners can't do it themselves and be consistent and really do good. So the people who I know who have been able to implement something like EOS or scaling up have definitely gotten outside help in order to do that. But I was really excited about scaling up because I just felt like it went in like I had read Traction. I loved that book, the which is
great book.
yeah, Gino Wickman, who is the founder of EOS. And I also learned I didn't know that Gino and Vern, those two people, had worked together in the past. So it's not surprising that their models are similar. And
Yeah,
I
and
think
I actually found out more that Gino actually used to be a scaling up coach, which I
yes,
didn't realize
I
that. So
read. I
they're all tied together.
Yeah, they're all tied together, and so I'm like, "Well, Vern knows what he's doing." I kind of think of it as, like, when I look at my journey in business, I'm really good at certain things in my business, but I'm really bad at marketing and sales and talking about it, and I think Gino is, like, amazing at the sales and marketing of that brand of EOS, and I feel like Vern was more of, like, the helper type who's just you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a different feel.
Yeah, Vern is, and I've met Vern, and he's amazing, and he's such a giver, and he is such a brilliant man, and he just has so many amazing strategic ideas. And Gino, I think that, he had this idea to kind of like consolidate it and make it simpler, which is great for a certain market, right? It's a really good market. And then he marketed the hell out of it, basically.
Yes.
And it worked. It worked really well.
Oh,
So
yeah. It's been a lesson to me in a way, just looking at the 2 models and realizing, "Oh, this is that in action." Like, the thing that I struggle with the sales and marketing side of things, I'm looking at that in action with those 2 guys. Although I think Vern's company, it looks like they're marketing a lot better now.
yeah, they're definitely focusing on
Yeah.
it.
So that was really interesting to me that you chose that model. And I actually talked about this in my last episode that we spend a day a quarter strategizing for the next quarter, looking at what worked, what didn't, and then also 2 days a year doing annual planning, which is a lot. I could never have imagined before doing that much, and it's not enough also.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when we get so much done, it's kind of this weird concept where it's like, I can't believe we're taking a whole day, but you also get so much done, but you also want so much more.
Yeah.
It's a weird feeling, definitely. And I love those days. I thrive off those days. Why I do this.
I look forward to those days too. I think that structure has really helped us to be focused on what our quarterly goals are and staying and then having Denise in my company, my operations manager, she is super focused on staying in line with those things. So that's been very helpful to me as well. In this scenario, I am a rule follower, whereas in the past I probably wouldn't have been as much. So I would love to know. So some of the questions I like to ask are about your own strengths and weaknesses and things about, business for you. I find you to be a very brilliant strategist. I feel like you're really, really good at so many things. And the reason I think you're wise is because you will say when you're not good at something, like when you're weaker in an area, and then you find a resource or something. So, like, what would you say your strongest area of business is, and what is one of your weaker areas, and how do you compensate for that?
Yeah, so it's actually really interesting because I've had a little bit of a realization, I'd say in the last like 6 months, even of areas where, there's kind of this idea of what gives you energy versus what takes your energy, right? And so historically, I have been a doer, and I've been more of like kind of the integrator type of person. And I think I'm starting to realize that it's been because those are the roles that I've been in. And so I've been like a list checker and a like get it done. And now that I am running my own practice, and I'm starting to have people around me that can kind of fill those gaps, I'm actually starting to realize that that drains me more than I realized. And so, and we'll talk about this later, but I worked with my father a lot. My father's a big picture, like really big picture visionary person. And so I kind of had to be the implementer. I had to, because we worked together and someone had to fill that role. And so I think I can be really systemized and structured. I've kind of taught myself to be. But now that I'm in this role where I can kind of allow myself to be more of who I am way more of an idea person than I think I originally realized. And when I am able to choose, like, do I want to work on this or do I want to work on that? I would much rather come up with ideas and just kind of maybe like set the basic structure of the idea and then hand it off.
Same. Yeah, that's like what I live for.
Yeah, and so I'm just realizing that, like, I can come up with these ideas and kind of basic structure of it. Yeah, I've been told, many times that I'm really, really good at taking really complex ideas and explaining them very simply.
Yes, you are. You're very good at that because I never feel stupid when I'm talking to you about business. It's not that you dumb it down. You just really are good at explaining it to us in a way that we understand and also feel like validated. Like it's not like we should have known it somehow, but
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. And so I think that I'm starting to really be able to lean into those things, which is really exciting when you get to have the freedom to do those things that you really love, that give you energy. As a business owner, there's still things you have to do that take your energy every day. But but the more you can lean into those things that give you energy, I think is really important. So it's been nice to be able to do that. And so the thing I think I'm weakest at is I definitely, and I know that this is probably something we're going to talk about it, but I definitely get like imposter syndrome really bad, especially being younger. I also look younger than I am. So
Yeah.
it's like imposter syndrome on top of imposter syndrome. I'm in the business coaching world, which, as a lot of you may realize, it's mostly old white men in coaching world.
And a lot of vibrato and overconfidence.
Yes, it really is, and a lot of ego, and I am the exact opposite of that, and in fact, ego drives me insane. I cannot handle it, and so it's really hard to be in that world, and a lot of times I had a specific situation. I was at, like, a networking thing with a bunch of large businesses, actually, and I was very blessed to be in the room, honestly, and, I was talking to some guy, we were, like, getting food, and he was like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm a business coach." And the face that he had, he kind of looked at me like, "Oh, okay, whatever." And then we started talking, and he like started saying something about rocks and EOS or whatever. And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's Stephen Covey." And I started like spitting off all these facts,
Right.
not like in a rude way, but I was just like having conversation. And he kind of like took this step back and was kind of like, I mean, forgive me for saying it, was like, "Oh shit, she knows her stuff." And
Yeah.
it was just like, honestly, that moment made me so happy because
Validation.
like, it was such validation, and but it unfortunately, it takes me saying something or, like, validating that I actually know what I'm talking about to get people to actually take me seriously,
Yeah,
which is
well,
really sad.
in those rooms, because
Correct, in
I
those rooms.
think something that we've talked about a lot and that I've struggled with personally is being in the wrong room for so long. It makes you feel like I am the problem. There's something wrong with me, obviously, that I'm not being visible. And if I just got more confident, if I became a different human essentially than what I am, and it's not confidence, it's like overconfidence and just became like a salesperson essentially,
Yeah,
then I would
mhm.
be successful in this. And again, energy. Like I believe in energy big time. That drains my energy. To have to pretend to be something that I'm not is so draining. When I'm in the right room with the right people, I don't have to do any of that stuff. They see me, they understand me. Like that's how we found each other as well. Like
It is.
so that's the part that's hard is you have to change who you are in those types of rooms to become visible. You have to prove yourself, or do you go to a different room, right?
Well, and I found that I kinda have this, like, leggings and sweater look. Like, that's what I wear. I wear leggings and sweater, and I have my, like, my wooden earrings. That's
I look
and
like a hippie. I don't dress like a professional lady.
I
Let's
know.
just say that.
And honestly, I wear this outfit, and it's like my outfit, and, yes, I have different shirts, but, it's like the same combination, and I've started to realize that well, first of all, I live in Eugene, Oregon, so it's, like, definitely not a big deal, which helps, but even when I go other places, I personally feel so much more comfortable and confident when I'm in my outfit, when I feel comfortable in my clothes, And there has been times where I went into a room and no one else was dressed that casually. I was probably the most casually dressed, but I still felt more confident because
Mhm.
I was comfortable in my clothes. And so that's something that I've learned about myself is like I've done this experiment, I said so to speak, where I've gone in and I'm like in the button up in the suit and all this kind of stuff and I feel stiff and I actually perform worse than if I go in my comfortable clothes and I'm just myself and I'm just like bubbly and outgoing, and you know what? I might say something stupid and silly, but that's me, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And so I've been able to, like, get into that. Now, am I done being self-conscious about it? No, of course not, it still happens, but I've gotten better at, like, knowing that I'm okay, just being myself.
Yeah, I think that's so important to for people to understand. If you're in a room that does not feel easy for you, or if you have to dress up in a certain way to be there, I think like of realtors a lot because you have to present this image, or they've decided that they have to present this image that is so like surface. For some people, that's really hard, and it doesn't actually, it's just a look. And I know people judge by how you look those first 3 or 5 seconds, but I've decided that's okay because I like to be comfortable too, and I like to be just me. I've been told I haven't been told to my face, but I've been told by some of my male friends that people perceive me to be ditzy or earthy, crunchy melody, hippy dippy or whatever, just because of the way I present myself or look. And I'm also giving people what they want sometimes, I think, as a woman. If I'm in a room full of guys, I'm not going to talk with this level of authority. I'm gonna talk my voice goes up a little higher, and I'm more, like, engaged in a different way, and I'm gonna be more bubbly. I'm gonna be more, I mean, it's not fake melody, it's still me, but it's not how I present myself to, like, my friends, or you know what I mean? So, it's interesting that we have to change the way we are sometimes, or we choose to change the way we are sometimes when maybe we shouldn't do that. I don't know.
Yeah, totally agree, and I think that I used to do that a little bit more where I would change and be more, reserved, I would say. I am not a reserved person, you know this about me. And
Yeah.
so, I go into a networking scene and I'm, like, walking up to a group of guys like, "Hey, guys, how's it going?" You
Yeah.
know? And I think that I used to not do that as much, but I've gotten to the point where I'm able to and talk the talk and talk about business and bring it up, and then they're kinda like, "Oh, wow, she can talk about business, and I'm not just some ditzy girl and whatever, and I think as weird as this may sound, it makes me feel good when that happens,
Yeah.
right? And so it's
Underestimated
kind
to yeah.
of yeah, it just feels good, and so I think a part of me, like, craves that a little bit, if I'm being honest, and so it just pushes me to do it more.
This podcast is sponsored by HomeServiceVA.com. As an always recovering workaholic, I know what it's like to lie awake at 3 a.m. with your mind racing through endless mental task lists and constantly choosing between growing your business and having a life. That's why I started Home Service VA, to create the company I wish had existed when I started working with my first assistant. Now, we match entrepreneurs like you with virtual collaborators who understand your vision and can help bring it to life faster than you can on your own. Systems and support have transformed my life, giving me back precious time while scaling my impact. And listen, I can't transform your life, only you can, but we can find you a dedicated collaborator and provide you with the right systems and support so that you can create the change you want to see in this world without burning yourself out in the process. Visit homeserviceva.com today to learn more or to apply to work with us. I think it's better than presenting with ego. There are times when I'm in a room where I feel it's rarer, but certain personalities push me to feel like my ego comes out, and it makes me act in a way that I actively am like, ew, don't act like this. You don't want this. But it's like the personality of the other person is bringing something out in me. And so I really, I think the people I respect the most are people like you, Sam, who just are yourself, but you're so wise. And it doesn't matter how old you are, like you're a very wise person. You never pretend to be the smartest person in the room. And maybe that's what the trigger is for me when somebody's pretending to or acting as if they're the smartest person in the room. I'm not sure what it is, but I don't think when somebody's doing that, wow, they're so wise. I think, oh, there's projecting. But with somebody like you, you're saying things that you're a great human and then your business knowledge is insane. There was a company that was interested in buying my company. And so I definitely wasn't sure that I wanted to sell it, but I thought it would also be a good practice to see what it would be like to sell the business. And the coolest thing was that because you were my coach, you have a background in, what do you call it?
Acquisition.
Acquisitions. Yeah. And so you were able to use you taught me so much. Tell me a little bit about like what that background is, because a lot of business owners don't know anything about selling or buying businesses. And I thought it was such an interesting process. And by the
Yeah.
way, we decided in the end, of course, not to sell.
Yes.
But yes.
It was a process, but yeah, just, obviously there's a whole history behind it, but the short of it is that my dad is an entrepreneur, and he actually within his business did a roll up strategy. So he ended up purchasing, basically had his core company, and then he ended up purchasing, I think it ended up being like 26 companies within the same industry. So it was a roll up strategy. And I was involved in a lot of those. And I helped with kind of the financial aspect of it, with the culture integration, with the operations integration. There was, kind of different pieces of it depending on what acquisition it was. And then once he got his business to a point where the leadership team was running it, we actually ended up buying and selling a couple different businesses. So there's an IT business that my brother and my cousin run called The Nerd Stuff in Eugene. There was a welder repair company that I was the president of that was kind of a flip. We bought it, we built it up, we merged with another company, and then sold it to a competitor. That was a fun experiment. Learned a lot from that one. And then my father owns a couple other businesses that I was kind of a fractional COO of. So I have a lot of experience with acquisition, which includes valuing a business and a little bit of negotiation with that as well. So that was kind of a little bit of the background that I brought, and yeah, it was a fun experiment that we kind of played with.
And I also have a baby background of acquisition and
Wow.
buying and selling. And I didn't realize when, all of my home service businesses, some of them were small. Most of my companies were pretty small. I didn't realize how few companies can actually be sold or are saleable in the eyes of, like, most small business owners don't have the opportunity or take the opportunity to sell their companies. I forget what the statistic is, but that really surprised me. I'm actually going on a podcast in a couple of weeks where they only want to talk to me about this, because they talk about a lot of things and they say it's rare. They haven't been able to find somebody who really has done that with small businesses. But I didn't understand that what I did when I was, buying a company, selling my companies, repossessing a company, like, there's all sorts of things I had to do, and also starting from the ground up. These are all experiences that lead to bigger, like, it's a smaller scale, but the principles are all the same. And so I can roll that into future businesses. It's not separate from what a large corporation does, is what I'm trying to say. You might have better words.
No, it's very similar. I mean, there might be slightly different ways of valuing it as it gets bigger, but it's really similar concepts, and it really is transferable for sure. And you're right, a lot of small businesses don't sell. Unfortunately, the main reason they don't sell is because they don't think they don't realize what they have to sell. And so it's like, you have a customer list, you have inventory, you have something to sell. And so it's really about identifying what is it that you're selling, and then who is that ideal buyer for it. A lot of people close up shop because they just don't even think about the fact that they can sell,
And it's exhausting to sell a business, I'm not gonna lie.
for
My
sure.
strategy was always trying to sell to an employee, because I knew it would be much harder for me. I would have to do a lot more legwork to sell to an outside company. I'd have to do a lot more negotiation. And when I've made decisions that I want to be done with something, I like to do it as quickly as I can. But I also had systemized my businesses. And so I think there's different levels where, like, a lot of small businesses, the systems live in their heads, or they're the labor, especially for smaller companies. And so that's harder to sell, but you still have customer lists. You still have a phone number. So that's like the most basic version of selling, your equipment, all that stuff. But then, like, there's other levels to it. Like, if you can put your systems outside of your head and onto, into documents. And then if you can have the team around you that actually understands their jobs, like, there's different levels of that. So what have you seen, like, when your father, for instance, bought those 20, did the roll up? what is it? Roll up or roll over
Yeah, roll-up
strategy.
strategy, yeah. So there's lots of different things that come into play, but, just a couple things. I'm not gonna be able to capture them all, but when you have a product or a service, selling to a competitor, right? A competitor, they could just roll it in, right? That's one thing. An employee is a perfect one, especially if you have the systems in place that they can just take over. Another one is, like a vendor or a customer, especially if you're in B2B, that would want to offer that same service or be able to like cross sell to your clients, right? That's another one that's really common. So, for example, in the welder repair company that we purchased, so we repaired welding equipment, gas apparatus equipment, and we ended up merging with a company that did electrical welding repair, right? So that was perfect because we had the same customers, two different businesses, one did gas, one did electric. So we merged and then we ended up actually selling to a company that sold like the gas essentially. And they
Oh.
opened a repair or whatever department. And so that is like just a simple example of it was actually a customer of ours that we ended up selling to who opened up a repair center essentially. So that's something to think of is something like that. And so there's lots of different ways to look at it. We had I'll tell just a quick story in the IT industry. We're a computer repair store that turned into an MSP, which is a managed service. So we work with businesses. And there was another computer repair store that announced they were closing. They announced it, they put a sign up, they had it on their website, like everything was happening. And we reached out to him and we ended up basically buying it for honestly not a lot of money because he was already planning on closing. We got all his inventory, we got his customer list, we got his website and his phone number. And that's pretty much it. Basically, what we did is we put a sign on our door. We directed his phone number and his website to us, and it said now serving, his customer. And we got so much business out of it because these people just didn't have a place to go. And they would have gone to one of the other repair shops in town, but now they had a place to go. And so it was just like that easy.
That's actually the story of my commercial holiday lighting company is that's like my dream job. I love decorating things, but, one of my friends owned it, and he decided he was moving to Florida after 20 years of doing this business, and I think it had actually been in his family for 40 years, and he was just gonna shut it down, and I was like, "Oh my god, no," and I got that business very inexpensively, and it was worth a lot more than what he sold it for, but he didn't care. He'd already made the decision, and because I had a background in taking, the first business I ever bought was not an organized, systems-based company. It was just like thousands of paper receipts and a paper calendar. So, like, I had the background of being able to systemize the thing. Then I was able to sell it again when I had to, although it never goes right according to plan, but we'll pretend it does. So, like, what have you seen in terms of when somebody's selling? Like, what are some of the things that they should be thinking about? Because you gave me a different perspective on my company when last year. We were still a recruiter back then. We hadn't even transitioned. We didn't have reoccurring revenue at that point, and it was worth a lot more than I thought it was going to be worth, even without having that. So, what are some of the things that people, should think about? And by the way, I think most business owners don't start a business thinking about selling, which is what we should do as an exercise, but it doesn't hurt to think about it in that way.
Well, the first thing is that the things that help improve the value of a business are also the things that make a business easier to run. And so these things are all very similar. And so that's one thing to consider. But things that you're thinking about is like, what are the things that a buyer would want, right? That's going to increase the value. But then you're also thinking about ease of selling. So it's kind of the ease of selling and then increasing the value, which are kind of the same thing also. So some of the things that increase the value are systems and processes, like you said. If you have everything documented and you can kind of just copy and paste those over to the new owner, that's very valuable for them. That increases the value of it. It also helps it so it's easier to run that business, especially like if you have key people, like call like the bus concept. Like if that person got hit by a bus and no one else knows how to do that, that is not a good thing. And that includes you as the owner, right? You need to have people or it written down on how to do these processes, which is really important.
Yeah. Can I mention something about that? So, right now, my mom just had open heart surgery last week. I'm living with my 95-year-old grandmother, taking care of her. My company is running without me for the most part. I'm doing just very little, but last year I had surgery, was out for 6 weeks, the year before that. So I've had a lot of times where I've been very fortunate to be able to leave and things run. It might not grow during that time, but and I'll get to the point where it will grow during a time when I'm not there, but it always does okay. It does good enough where I never have to worry about what's happening, and that's the value of having the right people, having good systems in place, and having what you've helped us with, KPIs and, accountabilities and things like that.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of part of that too, which is the next thing is like having measurables, KPIs, some kind of vision or growth plan or something like that is very valuable because if you can present that to a buyer, I'm like, hey, this is our plan, this is our goals, this is maybe historically the goals that we've hit, those types of things. Like that shows the growth of the company. It shows that you are able to follow a growth plan. And that's also very valuable, especially if you have those KPIs and you are measuring those things, they can actually see the history of those metrics, which is very valuable. Another thing is that recurring revenue, or contracts, or those types of things. Any business that has recurring revenue is automatically more valuable because if it's a business that you have to push and sell for every single dollar that you're earning, it's riskier for the buyer, right? Because especially if it's really, what's the word, like it's the owner's face, right?
Yes,
Business is
yes.
like all about the owner, and it's the owner's face, and the owner's the salesperson, and then it's the owner's doing all the sales and marketing and all those types of things, and then a new owner comes in and they don't have recurring revenue. Like there's a big risk there for the new buyer, because now what, you have to transfer that brand, not only just transfer ownership, but you're actually transferring the entire brand, and that can be really, really risky. Not impossible. It is possible to do it.
Well, you're gonna get less money from a potential buyer. They're gonna rightfully
Rightfully
say,
so.
"Thank
I
you,
think
rightfully
right.
so say." No, but they're
Uh-huh.
gonna say like, "Hey, we're taking a risk. I'm buying a client list essentially, and you have a brand, but it's based on you. So I don't know if this is gonna work." Most likely it will work, but it's a good negotiation tactic for
Yeah, if
somebody
you
who's
do it
buying.
smartly, and typically what happens is the seller and the buyer work really well together to come up with some marketing plan to transfer it, and really the buyer is kind of in charge of that narrative, right? And how that's gonna be transferred over. But as a business owner now, if you are going to want to sell at some point, think about that. Like, are you the face right now? Because if you are the face, what can you do to start to transfer that to the business and less you? It doesn't mean you're out of it. It just means it's less your face, more the group or more the brand, because that does increase the value of the business.
I mean, I literally put my face on our vans for the last business, but it was like a Rosie Mel, we called her because it was like,
Well,
and
that's
that's
okay.
like a mascot. It wasn't, yeah, and it was more about knowing the clients, and 2 guys bought that company, and it still works, so I feel like that in that case, but it's more about, like, removing yourself from the processes as much as possible so that a client isn't expecting to see you every
Well,
time.
talk to you every time, right? If you're
Exactly.
like, I'm only wanting to talk to Mel, like I'm not gonna talk to anyone else, like that's a problem because you wanna be able to get out of it. I mean, that really is kind of the last thing is like, as an owner, if you're selling and you're leaving, what are you doing? What's your day-to-day activities? And the more out of the business that you can be, the easier it is to sell, because not only is it more valuable for the buyer, but you're going to have more access to more potential buyers, because some buyers are not, they don't want to buy a job. They're an investor, or they want to buy something that they can run and spend very little time on, or they want to expand it. So they don't want to focus on growth. They don't want to expand, or they don't want to focus their time and energy on the day-to-day operations.
Yes.
So if you as a business owner are not spending that very much time, or no time in the operations, you now have access to a bigger pool of potential buyers, which therefore increases the potential buying power.
Yeah. I've done that with home service VA, and I think it's really hard for business owners to do it because we're control freaks. We've built this thing and it's our baby and it needs to run exactly as we see it should be run, and nobody else can do it that way, and it takes a lot of work, like psychological work, to get out of that mentality. And you have to test it. You have to know that it doesn't matter how they're doing the thing, it's the result that matters the most. And I think you've told me that many times as well during my journey with you.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, and it's hard and it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And it is a lot of mindset of, the reality is that if you're doing all the things, you're not going to grow. That's just the reality. You're not going to grow. And so if your goal is to grow, then you can't do all the things. You just can't. And so,
Absolutely.
and we talked about energy earlier, and like you're spending all your energy doing all the things. That includes the things that take your energy. And so you're going to do the things that matter most and the things you enjoy poorly because you're spending your energy and time doing the things that either you don't like to do or that you aren't very good at, honestly, because you feel like you have to.
Well, and most small business owners, that's all they're doing. They didn't start their business to do paperwork, most of them, unless they become like an accountant or a bookkeeper, I guess, or
Right. Unless
something.
they like doing
Unless they
that.
like doing paperwork. I would say like the majority of my time in the early years was spent emailing, phone calls, like estimates, things that I hated doing. I like talking to people, but I don't like doing that stuff because I don't like the consistency of like you have to do it whether you want to or not. And it's such an energy drainer. Most people in the beginning are thinking about time as their resource, which in the beginning, sure, you can think about it that way. But as you're getting more revenue in, you have to think about that energy because if you don't get out of that cycle, you're going to stay doing the same old things. And those things are actually easier. That's another reason why I think we do them. Thinking is hard. And that is what ideas are. It's a lot of thinking. It's a lot of like, it feels weird when you're a hardworking person who has like been taught your whole life, you got to work hard. But the thinking is the hard work now for me and taking the time and space to do that.
Well, and sometimes it's not necessarily that the thinking is hard, it's the taking the time to do the thinking that's hard,
Mhm.
right?
That's true.
That's really it. You're a great thinker, Mel.
That
Thinking
is
takes
very,
0
yeah.
energy for you. But
Yes.
it's the turning the rest of your brain off. It's the not trying to get other things done at the same time and really focusing on the thing. That's the part that's hard, right?
Yeah, it really
At
is.
least for some people, right? Some people, they do have to actively work at thinking on things, right? Because it doesn't come as naturally to them. So it just kind of depends on what your MO is. And for us, it's, we got a million ideas,
Oh,
but
yeah. So many ideas. Well, let's transition a little bit
yes.
because I am going to move on to the timeline of your life. Timeline of your life. So, Sam, what happened in 2023? What was going on then?
Yes. Well, I met this amazing woman named Melody Edwards in
You'll get
20.
your check later.
So in 2023, I've been going through a lot of transitions, and honestly, I was lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I have 3 kids and a wonderful partner, and I had decided that I did not want to be a fractional COO anymore. I was selling the welders company. I had stepped away from the IT company, and I was basically mentoring under my father's VP of his company. I had an opportunity to basically take over the company. And I felt like it was, my destiny, right? It's this large organization. I'd been working in it for quite a while. And here I am. It makes sense, right? Here's my dad's company. Now, next step, you're going to take over the family business. And I've been doing that for about 8 months, probably. And it was draining my energy. We talk about energy again. I was pretty miserable, honestly. And I had this opportunity to go to a Camp Yes. Shout out,
Yes.
shout out to Marley Williams. And I had been following Marley for years, and I'd always wanted to do one of her camps, and she announced that it was the last one she was doing. And I was like, I have to go. I have to go to this camp. And so I went. I signed up and I said, I'm going. And I went to this camp and that's where I met Mel.
Yes.
And basically, this camp it was 4 days, 4 days of a women retreat, and it was for women leaders and entrepreneurs, and it was all about saying yes to yourself. And so you really got deep in what do you want with your life, like what what drives you? What do you really want? And during those 4 days, in addition to trying to sleep in a hammock with Mel in the rain and
Thunderstorm,
thunderstorm,
lightning. Yeah.
didn't go over so well. I really just was like, you know what? This is not what I want. And I kind of had this like, you know, to be vulnerable about it. It was like, I don't want to just be my father's daughter, you know?
Yes.
And it was hard. It was really, really hard because I felt like I should take over my father's business. I'm very close with my dad and I idolize him, honestly. And so it was really, really hard. And I came away with that and was basically like, I'm not going to do it. I really loved when we were doing acquisition coaching, which we had done before, which was helping business owners with acquisition. And so I left that knowing that I didn't want to take over the business, knowing that I wanted to do some kind of coaching or consulting, but not knowing anything past that. And I went on a journey of research and what is out there. I knew I wanted some kind of group of coaches or a community where they could help me along this journey. And after a few months, that's when I found the Scaling Up community. And it was a very, very transformational moment for me because it really got me. I mean, it completely turned my world upside down in a good way, or right side up is the right terminology, because I was on this path to take over my dad's business. And a lot of people could say, you know, I walked away from a really hefty income and a comfortable life. And instead I started my own business. And, you know, starting a business from scratch, as a lot of people that are listening probably know, is not easy. It's very terrifying. And then the other thing to add on that is that my partner does not work. He's a stay-at-home dad. And so all of the financial burden was on me while starting this business from scratch. It was a lot. It was a lot. And you were there. You were there.
Yes.
But I would say that, you know, when you ask me about a pivotal moment, that is definitely, obviously it's the most recent, but it's also the biggest one for me. Because since that moment, I have never been more happy with the business. And yes, there are ups and downs and things are tight and it's been hard, but I am so happy with what I'm doing with my days, with the people that I get to work with. I get to fill my cup every day working with amazing people like you, Mel, and it's the best decision I've ever made. So
I
I'm so
agree.
happy about it.
I think that was a pivotal moment for me as well, going to Camp Yes, because up until then, I had been in such a male dominated industry, and my whole business world was surrounded by men, being led in my leadership journeys a lot of times by what guys were doing, which is fine. But I also had this tug that I've talked about where it was not filling me. It felt like a lot of work, a lot of energy to keep up in a way that wasn't actually the way that I wanted to grow, and to it wasn't the people I wanted to serve. And so Camp Yes, I went because I was told about it. I went across the country to go to it. And it was really the first time that I was doing like a female, like a group of women. It was very weird for me. I loved it. And also it was different. And so just, I think, did we meet on the first day or something?
I think so. I think it was in the art room.
Yeah, in the art room, probably. Yeah, like the fact that there was, yeah, so it really just helped to confirm, like, these are my people. Not everybody there was my person, but it was like so easy to be in that space, to meet people, to share ideas. We were seen by each other. You didn't have to feel like you had to prove anything. It was just fantastic. And I'm so grateful. That's probably one of my pivotal moments for being, and the shift has not been easy to go towards what I want to go towards, but you've been very helpful in that as well. So we've kind of been growing together.
Definitely. We've helped each other with it for sure.
I think it's interesting that you're so high level in what your knowledge of business is, your coaching, your ability to really understand very complex issues and break it down for people like me in a way that makes sense. And also having to start from scratch, that's actually like, it's really hard to do the things that you're coaching on when you're also spending your days coaching. I would imagine that's very difficult. Like, how do you market? Who do you market to? What are like there's so many things. So, what have you learned in that journey that has kind of things that are maybe more basic that you hadn't considered when you were starting out because you're way up here and then you're starting down here? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I am so blessed in the way that because I've had to start from scratch, I've actually become such a better coach because I'm having to do all of these things myself, right? And so as I'm like helping somebody with like marketing strategy, I'm like, I just did my marketing strategy or I'm doing my marketing strategy. And so I'm able to kind of relate it back to what I'm doing at the same time. And so it's been really, really helpful to have to go through these things. Now I went through these things with the other businesses, but a lot of the other businesses we acquired them, right?
Right.
This is the first time that I've built a business from scratch. And so I've never had to do this before. This is new for me. And so for anybody that I'm coaching that built it from scratch, I'm learning from them. I'm learning from you, Mel, right? Like you have experiences building something from scratch that I have never had to deal with before. And so that's one thing that's amazing about being a coach, consultant, whatever you want to call me, is that, I'm helping people with seeing blind spots and things that they don't necessarily see, but I'm learning from them too, which is amazing. And I love that, which just makes me a better coach for everybody, right? Because then I learn and then I can now translate it to the next client. And so I'm just constantly learning, which I really love. One other thing that I haven't mentioned yet, but so I started this business from scratch. And then, fun fact, I believe in acquisition. So I decided to also buy another business. And so, I just can't sit still. So I bought a leadership development business based out of Portland called Executive Forum, and I closed on that just this last October in 2024. And so I have my strategic coaching business. I have a leadership development organization, which really goes hand in hand with the strategy side of things. And so I'm doing both of those things, and I have clients. And so one of the things that's really funny, and I talk to my program coordinator Sky, who is amazing, about this all the time, is they say like chefs don't like to cook at home.
Yes.
That happens to me 100%. I'm like, okay, Sky, we have set our quarterly initiatives and I haven't even looked at them in 2 months.
Right.
And I'm like, I literally am like talking to my clients all the time about consistency and KPIs and all these things. And then I'm just like not always great about it with myself
I
because I'm
love
self
hearing that. Thank you for saying that because I think most people would not admit to it. And it's the same with me having a virtual assistant agency, right? Like I'm supposed to be this person who is very whatever people think of, what I
doing
am. Well,
virtual. Yeah.
yeah, right now, my assistant is not I don't have a melody manager at this moment. So it's like I'm melody managerless and I'm having to run my own life for a minute. And it's hard to always practice the things that I preach to clients all day. It doesn't mean that we don't understand that it actually works
Yeah, of course.
or, but sometimes it's exhausting to, you're giving out your energy to other people. And so and we both have families and other things going on. So like sometimes the last things we're doing are our own stuff when probably it might be smarter if we did those things first, but we're givers.
I know, and that's exactly what it is. And so I have to constantly be pulled in. And so it's funny too because Sky is my program coordinator. She's also my assistant, and so she's my melody manager.
He's your
And so
SAM manager.
she's
Yes,
my
your
SAM
Samantha
manager.
manager.
And so she will be like, "Okay, Samantha, like we need to talk about these rocks." Like, and I move really fast, so our rocks are changing like monthly, I swear. And so she's the person that kind of helps keep me on track because I need one of those, right? And so
I think every high level leader needs a melody manager or some sort of executive assistant because we cannot be all things. We cannot be good at all the things. We can't do all the things. And the level of lists, like the amount of things on my list are not possible to be done by one person. And so I might look good on the surface. It's not because I'm like amazing and superhuman. We have to have those people. They make us look good and they fill our voids.
well, and Sky and I've gotten this really good cadence of like, I know that, I'm the idea person. I come up with the idea and I kind of rough outline the idea and then I give it to her and she like finishes it and then hands it back to me and I make maybe minor tweaks and then we're done. And like that has worked so well. And then there are times when I start to get in the more of the details and she has to push me out. She's like, no, I got it. Like, stop. And she
That's
has to
the
do that.
collaborative relationship. You want somebody who is going to be not just a doer, who's not just going to do what you want. You need a collaborator. That's what I call that relationship. It doesn't work as well if you just have somebody who's only doing things for you, because they don't hold us accountable. And it's okay to be held accountable as a leader if you give permission to your person to do that.
Yes, it's so important, and it's funny because I talk about Sky. Sky was actually my dad's assistant, so I actually hired her for him, and I did the vetting process and everything, and now I'm stealing her away from him, because he's semi-retired, and he'll never actually retire, and so I'm stealing her away because we have such a good dynamic, and I'm like, "I love her, and I'm taking her."
Yeah,
So,
it's awesome.
yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. And I mean, again, the thing that I admire about you is that you are always so encouraging, but you're very fact-based. You look at so we had so many changes at Home Service VA in the last year. We changed like the way that we went from a recruiter to an agency. That whole model change was huge. We changed founders. We changed the industry that I want to serve. It went from an industry to a psychographic, basically, which is not easy. So I've made business the hardest possible. Like, I haven't made it easy for us to be able to, but I truly believe in the vision of what I want to do. And that's a lot of the work that you've done and that we've continued to do every quarter, which we probably won't have to do forever, I imagine. But is there a point where I can stop talking about my BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal, and maybe that changes, but there's certain things we keep having to talk about because of the transitions. Is that normal or is it a Melody thing?
I think it's a it's a loaded question because I think the one that we keep talking about is, yes, eventually we'll get to a point where that will change, but that you're an idea person, Mel, and so there will always be the next thing, right? So I think it kind of depends. I mean, if you want to be a business owner that gets to a point where you're like, this is where I want to be, where business is steady and you're just kind of managing the craziness that is that level of business, then yeah, okay, we're there, right? But there's not really a reality of that, especially when you're a person like you
I don't want
that
to do
wants
that.
the next thing, right? And so that then the answer is no. You're never going to get past that, and I'm sorry if that's what you want.
Well, it's good to know that that's the case. I like to just have the answers so
Yes.
that I can reset my expectation.
But the good thing is you feel accomplished in the sense that you're accomplishing this thing and then you pick the next thing, right? And so there is a sense of accomplishment here. And that's why during the quarterlies, we always look behind and say, how did we do? We kind of rate ourselves and see, what can we do better? What did we do well? Because we want to acknowledge that.
One of the favorite things that you did, that you gave us is it's always been very hard for me to understand how to attach a metric or a KPI to our values in the company. And the things that I really care about and that really matter, and that we've also shifted over time. But because this business is very mission driven, it's based on my need for a sense of purpose and wanting to be surrounded by people who work in a certain way, who care about people first, essentially. It has made it hard sometimes to know if somebody's doing good or bad. And so, can you tell me about that, the grid, or can you tell people about what is it called?
Yeah, it's called the talent assessment. It's a scaling up tool, so it's from Burn Harnish, and it's one of my favorites of the tools. It's just so simple. But essentially, what it is that on one axis is your core values, and the other axis is productivity. And so, what you do is you say, okay, how aligned is, and you're rating a staff member, basically an employee. And so you say, how aligned is this staff member to the core values of the company, on a scale of 1 to 10, essentially. Now, if you're very, very confident in your core values, it's easier to do this, right? If you're not, it's harder to do this. And then on the other side is performance. How well are they performing on a scale of 1 to 10? And kind of the same thing. If you have really clear KPIs with this individual, really easy to rate them. If you don't, it's a little harder to rate them, right? So that's just one aspect of it. And then what you do is you say, okay, well, if someone is really strong in core values, they're a really good match on the core values, and they're a really high performer, they call them an A player,
Right.
essentially, right? Like they're really well aligned. And those are the people that you actually want to coach to retain.
Yeah.
coach to retain them. If these people are low core values and low performers, then they probably are not a good fit for your organization, and you kind of want to coach them out.
Yes.
If these people are high core values but low performers, then they could be in the wrong seat, right? Like maybe, especially if you're a larger organization, maybe there's a different position that they might be better suited for, or maybe they just need some training, right? Maybe they're lacking some training or some guidance in their position, is a lot of times what it is. So you want to coach them up typically. And then the fourth one is the people that are low core values and they are high performers. And unfortunately, these people are cancer in the organization typically. And these are the people that like they kill it or they're really, really knowledgeable and you feel like you cannot get rid of them. There's no way you could get rid of them. But they're such low core value alignments that they actually pull the A players down. They actually can cause chaos in your organization. And so those are actually the people you want to coach out first. You actually want to get rid of them before you even get rid of the people that are low performers because they can be so detrimental to an organization. And they're the people that owners and leaders tend to hold on to longer, unfortunately. And so the idea is that when you map people out, it's just to have an understanding of where people are at and then come up with a coaching plan. Are you coaching out? Are you coaching up? Or are you coaching to retain? And the key here is to coach to retain those A players because a lot of people tend to neglect the A players. It's like, oh, well, they're good. They're a perfect fit. They do their job. I don't have to worry about them. And so that you just leave them alone. But that's actually the opposite of what you want to do because if you leave them alone, then they're actually feeling neglected, even though you may not feel that. They may even tell you that they don't need attention, but they do. They want the attention. They need at least a little bit of attention.
They grow stagnant as well. Like they're
Correct.
growth minded. They want to keep growing usually professionally, personally.
Yeah. So you want to have those conversations about where they want to be and what their goals are and help them achieve those goals, whether it's personal or professional or some level. So the idea is to really just understand where all your people are at and then come up with a coaching plan for each of them, whether up, out, or to retain. So that's the general gist of it.
Man, it's been so helpful for me because I love people. And so it's been really hard to have employees that I really like, and also knowing that they might not be a value fit, they might not be a performance fit, and it's especially hard if they're not a for me, it's hard if they're not a value fit because that means everything to me. That makes or breaks everything. The culture in our company is so important that I hold it above everything else because when I haven't, like those people who are they make or break the mood of the company every day, but they're high performers, like they destroy companies, they destroy culture, and culture is hard to build.
Yeah, it's really hard. Well, and the thing is that, they aren't happy either.
Yeah.
And it's not like, oh, they're a bad culture fit, so they don't belong anywhere. Like, no, there's another organization somewhere else that has a different culture that they're a perfect fit for. And so you're doing them a favor by helping them find a better fit for themselves. And so, you don't have to feel bad about it as long as you're not mean, right? Like, there's
They're
no
not
way that,
bad people. They're not
no,
bad people, and you hired them for a reason, but it doesn't mean they're gonna fit in the thing that you have built, the ecosystem that you have carefully built and are carefully managing, and you have to be really careful about that.
yeah, you definitely do. It can be a time suck, it can be an energy suck, it can, and it honestly will slow you down to get to your goals. It really will.
Agree. Yeah. Well, Sam, I could literally talk to you all day. I have in the
Me
past.
too. And we have,
And
yes.
we have many times, but, you have things to do. You have people to coach, and I have grandmas to feed. So,
Yeah.
we've reached the final part of the podcast, the Misfit Minute. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So, early bird or night owl?
Night owl,
Introvert or extrovert?
extrovert,
More time or more money?
time.
Type A or type ADD?
ADD.
Really? Wow.
Well, I
Saver
don't know, I'm in the middle.
yeah. Saver or spender?
Spender.
Workaholic or recovering workaholic?
I am still a workaholic,
Okay.
100%.
Adventure or relaxing?
Adventure,
Things or experiences?
experiences,
Phone calls or text?
phone calls.
Plan ahead, go with the flow.
Go with the flow.
Hands-on or delegate?
Hands-on.
Compete or collaborate?
Collaborate.
Sweet or savory?
Sweet.
Quick thinker or overthinker?
Overthinker.
You didn't overthink this. You
I
blasted through
didn't,
that.
but
Yeah.
I am an overthinker. 100%.
Well, you win. You win the prize. That
Woo! The prize that is just telling
my
me I want the prize.
appreciation. Yeah.
I will I will take it any day.
And you surprised me with a couple of your answers, by the way, because
Which one?
I would say type ADD. I get why you would say that, but you're somebody who's on top of things. And I think
Or
that's,
or let people perceive
I
that.
know. Yes, I get that too. And then the workaholic thing, not as surprising. Phone calls versus text. I didn't know that you were a phone call lady, but maybe I should have.
I am. I especially now, I'm finding myself just pick up the phone and call people. It's just so much easier for me. I don't know why.
Yeah. And I guess the other ones I am not surprised at, but yeah, I'm always a little surprised by people's answers because the way that we perceive ourselves and when people answer based on their first instinct, it's different because I want to know like what's your natural state? We all have ways that we like I am an overthinker, but I have like systems that help me to not overthink as much, right? So
Right.
but it is scary to put out what your natural state is because it sounds like weakness in the eyes of some people, but not people who listen to this. So,
That's right. Not these. Not our people.
yeah. Sam, you are definitely a business misfit. You are one of the original Bizfits because we talked about this last year, over a year ago. And I'm so grateful to you for everything that you've taught me, that I continue to learn from you. And if you ever stop coaching with me, I'll be devastated and it's not going to happen. The end.
Never. Never,
Yeah.
never.
But thank you for being here. And I hope this was enjoyable for you.
Oh, I love it. I always love talking to you. Thank you so much for having me. I love it, and I hope this was helpful for somebody out there.
It was. Listen, Bisfit, if you believe in the mission of this podcast, I need you to like and subscribe right now. Pause this, go find the podcast. You might already be there, which is easy. Just go like and subscribe. And if you really, really believe in it and you want Bizfits to unite and change the whole business world, please rate it. Rating is the best way to get the word out to attract more like-minded misfits like you and me so that we can overthrow the takers of this world who currently dominate the business universe. Now, I know I sound like I'm some courageous lady of business. I am not. I can't do this alone and I don't want to. I need you, and we need a coalition of fellow Bizfits. So do it now. The quicker we take action, the quicker we can change our business world. Now let's go do great things, and I will see you next week. I'm a misfit. 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 I'm a misfit.